What does it take for a game to stick in your memory? Incredible adventure? Stunning locales? Intense battles? All too often, these spaces in our psyche seem to be taken up by the big-budget AAA titles, your Zeldas and Red Dead Redemptions and Woodle Tree Adventures Deluxes. But once in a while, a game will come along and to give you everything those games give you in a neat little package over the course of only 10 to 15 hours. This is the power of the medium-budget game. Welcome to Random Game Reviews. I put every game in the PlayStation Store into a spreadsheet and use a random number generator to determine which games I will play and review. However, for this episode, I let my viewers suggest what games they want to see me review and picked randomly from that list, which is how I came to review Kena: Bridge of Spirits. In Kena: Bridge of Spirits, you play as the titular Kena, a spirit guide who helps wayward souls find peace and cross over to the other side. She's on a quest to hone her skills at the fabled mountain shrine, but to get there, she must clear the land at its base of the Corruption, a sprawl of creepy, goopy vines that has enveloped the forest and junked everything up with angry tree monsters. On this quest, Kena will revive a once bustling village and help the deceased residents of that village resolve their various traumas so they can stop haunting the forest and do whatever it is ghosts would rather be doing. Basically, Kena is a ghost therapist who will physically fight the ghosts, therapeutically, but Kena will learn that some spirits don't want to be helped. Aiding Kena in her quest are these adorable little Studio Ghibli creatures called Rot. The Rot are little forest buddies you collect on your travels that love you and follow you around like a school of ducklings. Look at how cute they are. Rot help you do all the things. They eat up the poison in the forest so you can advance to new sections. They move heavy things around at your behest. They help you fight monsters with their powerful abilities. They stop for a quick snack, and they engage in some light structural engineering. They're basically like Pikmin, minus the pain of having to constantly watch them die screaming. You'll use Rot in so many different ways, including transforming them into a chowder that you can use to clear paths. These silly little friends permeate every aspect of this game, and are the main element that sets Kena: Bridge of Spirits apart from a boilerplate action-adventure game. They're cute and lovable, fun to find, entertaining to utilize, and most importantly, you can unlock and buy them little hats to wear. This is an adventure game, so you know you're going to be fighting, solving puzzles, and climbing. That's what the genre is all about. It's not an adventure if you're not climbing stuff. To that effect, the platforming in Kena: Bridge of Spirits is decent. The game areas are separated into zones, which are fairly open, giving you room to explore, but you don't really get to use climbing and platforming to explore the same way you do in the bigger budget adventure games. The climbing sections are very intentional and well designed, but there's only one way to tackle them, which somewhat undermines the sense of play climbing mechanics are supposed to evoke. Nobody wants to go to a playground and only use the structure the way it was designed to be used. There's a lot of stuff in this game that is begging to be climbed, but you can only grab the ledges that look like they're covered in bird poop. The platforming in Kena is always satisfying and fun, and where it really shines is how the game incorporates Kena's weapons into level traversal. Using your arrows to activate these flower, spirit, tractor beam things is a good time, and later on you get bombs which you can use to explode yourself some platforms to climb. But weapons aren't just for platforming, they're also for violence. For a game that looks so gosh darn adorable, Kena: Bridge of Spirits has a surprisingly polished and challenging combat system. All the basic combat abilities you'd expect are there. Attack, heavy attack, dodge, shield, bow shooties, but built on top of that is a wide selection of special combat abilities that you can unlock by amassing karma, a currency you get by doing things like tidying up and snacking on berries. Some of the abilities are passive upgrades or new attacks, and others are powerful Rot abilities. But to use the Rot abilities, your little homies will need some encouragement. You see, the Rot gets scared of the freaky tree enemies, but if you bludgeon those enemies just enough, it will fill the Rot's hearts with courage, and you'll be able to use them to perform powerful attacks or to bind enemies for a short while. You can also build up the Rot's courage with courage drops, which sounds vaguely alcoholic. Getting your Rot drunk and surly enough to join the fight will often be the difference between victory and defeat. There's a good variety of enemy types that each require a different strategy to deal with and will work together to second-degree murder you. The fight sequences are well designed enough that you cannot get through Kena: Bridge of Spirits by button mashing. You'll need to constantly cycle between abilities and tactics, as well as master parrying to keep enemies off balance. Several of the fight sequences were challenging enough that it would take me several attempts to clear them, but since the combat in this game is fun, the challenge added added to my enjoyment and kept me on my toes. Every time you unlock new weapons, new types of corresponding enemies will show up, so the combat is always evolving. And my only knock against it is that some of the late game difficulty scaling is pretty aggressive, to the point where the later boss fights fully enter Dark Souls territory. Likewise, the puzzles in the game have a weird and uneven difficulty progression. Many of the puzzles are incredibly simple and boil down to activating a few crystals with your arrows or using your Spirit Pulse ability, which will open giant stone doors. Some puzzles will provide slightly more challenge, some will delight you with the way they fold platforming into the solution, and some will straight up confuse the out of you by giving you such vague contextual clues in the environment that you'll end up Googling the solution. If you solved the fishing shrine puzzle without using Google, I want to hear about it in the comments. You liar. Despite wonky difficulty scaling and underutilized platforming mechanics, I found all of the gameplay elements to be well executed, with the exception of the feature where you put on a mask to find your checkpoints and highlight points of interest, which is wildly underused. Speaking of masks, remember how I said you can buy hats for your rot? Well, you can also buy the masks. Awesome. Ember Lab, the studio that made this game, started their life as an animation studio. And it shows. The designs and animations in Kena Bridge of Spirits are on point. The characters look amazing and use the tried and true big Pixar character eyes to draw you in and make you care. Kena doesn't talk a lot, and shows a lot of her personality through her facial expressions. The designers did an excellent job making Kena come across as incredibly likable, even if you know almost nothing about her. More on that in a moment. The enemies look really cool and incorporate the theme of a corrupted nature that runs throughout the game, and the environments are stunning. The wilderness has an incredible lushness to it, and the game looks wonderfully serene through so many sections and epically hostile and desolate through others. This is the first PS5 game I've gotten to review, and it's great to stop and appreciate the lighting effects as rays of light shine through the trees or you run through the village square with its realistic shadows. The cutscenes are full of cinematic flair, and the whole thing is propped up by top-notch music and sound design. The gorgeous visuals are part of what makes it so enjoyable to scour the landscape looking for new hats for your rot. That's right, I'm not done talking about the hats. Fun fact, there's an entire currency in this game that is only for buying hats. This currency is absolutely everywhere. You'll solve entire puzzles and the reward will be hat money. Right now you're probably thinking, well, random game reviews, if there's a whole currency about it, the hats probably do something, like provide some kind of stat boost. And guess what? You're wrong. The hats do absolutely nothing. Except look so cute that if you're anything like me, upon finding out that you missed finding a hat in an area, you'll be like, F***, I better go find that hat. Hey little rot buddy, do you like your hat? Yeah? That's what I thought. One area where I felt mildly let down is the storytelling. Don't get me wrong, there are serious strengths. The lore of the world is interesting, and the story delivers on themes of loss, balance, and restoration in a way that really supports and carries the game. There are moments of heartbreak, relief, joy, passion, and anger that are truly beautiful, sentimental, and emotional. But unfortunately, none of those moments belong to Kena herself. We know that Kena is following in her dad's footsteps, and we will vaguely learn that something bad happened to her dad. But that's about all we know about her. We're not given any sense of what her journey means to her, or even why Kena is so invested in helping the spirits she encounters, other than the fact that she's just a cool dude. It's one thing to show me a groovy magical world and fantastical beasts, but everything could have been so much more impactful if I could really feel the stakes and hardships of the character that serves as my guide. But any complaints aside, I truly enjoyed my time with Kena Bridge of Spirits. It perfectly accomplishes everything a medium-budget game should. It delivers on gameplay, over-delivers on visuals, and I looked forward to every play session in my roughly 12-hour playthrough. Kena cultivates a mood that's hard to find in games these days, and it really hits you when you notice how great these hats are. This one looks like a doggy. This one's a stack of pancakes. This one is a frog that sits on your head. Hats! 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 It's time to answer the question, would I play this game if I were not destined to do so? For Kena Bridge of Spirits, the answer is yes. Kina is carried by its visuals and surprisingly well-implemented combat system, which makes up for the game's missed opportunities in the platforming and story departments. Kina rides this weird line where it truly overachieves based on its smaller budget to the point where I found myself unfairly comparing it to high-budget games, which is a point in its favor really. The fact is that this game just can't hit as hard as the blockbusters, but that's reflected in the price point. And while Kina has flaws for sure, I found the whole experience to be better than the sum of its parts. If you need a cheaper title to tide you over until your next 50 plus hours AAA adventure, Kina Bridge of Spirits is a solid one. That does it for this episode. A big thank you to Jonathan Glass for suggesting this game. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, leave a comment, and make sure to handle any lingering unfinished business so you can pass to the spirit realm without having the tar beaten out of you. I'll see you all next time on Random Game Reviews. In honor of all the gnarly tree monsters in this episode, I put my Discord channel to work using AI to create realistic depictions of Woodle, the lovable tree stump mascot from this channel's first episode. These are some of their horrible creations. To take part in such nonsense, come hang out in the Discord server.